Right. Joining me now are Jason Johnson and Margie Omero. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening,
Glad to be here, Rev.
Jason, we're going to get back to Sarah Palin in a moment, but first, nearly $900 million from the Koch brothers. I should mention we contacted the Kochs for comment, but have yet to hear from them. We've not heard from them. But what does it buy, and will it work in 2016?
It pretty much buys the election. And here's why this is important, Rev. If you look at the 2012 presidential election year, all 33 Senate races spent less than $300 million. So they have, right now, in 2015, they have committed to spending more money than was spent to pretty much control Congress. If this is not the line in the sand, if this is not the canary in the mine for Republicans and Democrats to get together and say, we have to do something about campaign finance reform. If we've got people who are willing to buy an election, not start their own party. If they want to start their own party, it will be fine. But people are willing to buy influence in elections. The two parties have got to get together and do something about campaign finance reform. This is horrible news for the future of this country.
You know, Margie, continuing along that line, let's put this in context. Remember that then Senator Obama's 2008 campaign raised $819 million when adjusted for inflation. The Koch brothers' political network will spend $889 million alone. That has nothing to do with what the GOP and others campaign raised. I mean, how can Democrats respond to this? Well, what needs to happen?
I mean, well, the first thing is, I don't know who the Koch brothers are fooling by putting a number out like 889. I mean, it sounds more like a bid on The Price is Right. Why not just come out and say, we're going to spend $1 billion? I mean, they're not fooling anybody with that number. I think it's important to remember
Well, what's $1 million or two among friends?
Right.
But go ahead.
Exactly. I think the thing to remember is it certainly buys access. You had a lot of presidential candidates coming to visit them this past weekend. It helps drive the agenda where you have candidates who really need to stand up for the Koch brothers and others like them. Here's what it doesn't buy. It doesn't buy that connection to real voters. I mean, the Koch brothers spent half that last time in the last presidential election. They weren't successful in getting their candidate in the White House. It can't replace having a candidate who actually can connect with people. And actually, it may, in fact, do the opposite when you have candidates who are going to try to reach out to the average Koch brother rather than to the average voter. You
know, that's a good point, Jason, because Democrats got out and knocked on doors and did a lot of grassroots organizing. I mentioned Governor Scott Walker. He formed a political committee. Remember in 2011, a blogger pretended to be David Koch and Carl Walker, who infamously bought into it. They talked about meeting Democratic leaders amid protests over Walker's anti-union proposal. Listen to this.
In my sense is, hell, I'll talk. If they want to yell at me for an hour, you know, I'm used to that. I can deal with that, but I'm not negotiating.
Bring a baseball bat. That's what I do.
I have one in my office. You'll be happy with that. I got a slugger with my name on it.
Beautiful.
And of course, that really was a David Koch, but Walker bought into it. But is it just a coincidence he's announcing this today? And is it by chance a lot of that money will go to push Scott Walker, who fought labor and unions in his home state?
Oh, most definitely. Look, Scott Walker is going to tap dance for wherever the money comes from. You got to look at, if you look at what's, say, happening in his state right now, he just said he's going to cut $300 million from colleges in Wisconsin, but wants to give $220 million of taxpayer money for the Milwaukee Bucks, who won't make the playoffs. You know, Scott Walker is beholden to whoever's going to give him the most cash in his coffers for 2016. But I'll tell you this, and I think this is really important to remember for 2016. Yes, it requires getting into people's hearts and minds to win an election, but we're not just talking about the president. The Koch brothers can essentially buy state legislatures. They can buy Kansas. They can buy Iowa. They can buy Minnesota with this level of money. So it doesn't necessarily matter if all of this money goes into 2016 at the top of the ticket.
But the problem is that it is legal, Jason. But I want to turn back to Sarah Palin, Marge, before we run out of time. The conservative Washington Examiner reports that her Iowa speech alarmed some in the GOP. Quote, as 2016 race began, GOP faces its Palin problem. And here's what Nicole Wallace, who worked on the McCain-Palin campaign, said about that Iowa speech when she was on Letterman last night. Nicole Wallace.
And she gave a speech this weekend in Iowa where, again, on full display were all the gaps in her knowledge. And that's what became obvious, not just to the public, but to us. And that was sort of chilling.
I mean, will Sarah Palin be a problem for the GOP in 2016 if she continues to play a prominent public role, Margie?
Absolutely. I mean, her speech, it was like taking a bag of Scrabble tiles and sort of shaking it up and just sort of pulling letters out and hoping you get a word. I mean, that was what her speech looked like. And the more coverage she gets for anything she does, saying she's thinking of running for president, giving a speech, not giving a speech, giving a good speech, it just takes away space that could be devoted to substantial, well-respected candidates on the right who are looking to make inroads with their party and also, importantly, reach out to general election voters. And they're not going to get as much time because we're going to spend more time talking about Sarah Palin. In that respect, she does real damage to the party.
Well, she gets a lot of attention, no doubt about that. Jason Johnson and Margie Omero, thank you both for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming